Alexis, welcome to Brian and the Judge.
It is great to see you, Judge.
Well, what kind of sense does it make from the point of view of expanding the economy, which is what you want to do in a recession, for the government to be giving people cash in order to take perfectly good objects out of the stream of commerce? It's not like the government's buying cars for $4,500 and selling them for $3,500. The government is buying cars for $4,500 and destroying them.
Yeah, I mean, they're destroying them because of the goal here on things like cap and trade to remove vehicles off the road that have all kinds of pollution concerns and issues like that. It's a way for them to address the green movement that's been very important to this administration. I have to tell you, my feeling about the program is I actually like the program. I know a lot of Americans don't like the program. What I like about it is it's real stimulus. And it's interesting. I was just speaking to the former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank who worked with Alan Greenspan. He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about this idea a year ago. I mean, he was the first person to write about this concept. His recommendation was that we would give people back a tax credit or a repayment to turn in their old clunker, and then it would give the whoever they turned it into the right to retrofit the vehicle, upgrade the vehicle to put it back on the road, and use the money not necessarily toward a new vehicle, but toward any purchase to help the economy get stimulated. And Judge, I know a lot of people don't like this, but what it says is that credit is available, and that when given the right incentive, the consumer is willing to spend money on a big ticket item.
But this is the taxpayer dollar going down the drain. I mean, where's this $3 billion? How's the $3 billion going to be paid back? It's either going to be paid back by inflation or taxes.
It's not going to get paid back. This is kiss it off. Say goodbye to this $3 billion. It's a down payment, clearly, toward their movement on cap and trade.
So how do we decide which business to give this free cash to? Why are we giving free cash to consumers to buy automobiles? Is it because the United Auto Workers vote for the Democrats? Even if you believe in this stimulus stuff, which I don't.
Yeah, look,
well, how do they choose this business?
Yeah,
Why not stimulate hospitals or furniture manufacturers or clothing sales
what they're trying to
food
do,
sellers?
There's two issues they're trying to do, Judge, and I agree with you. I mean, the first fiscal stimulus package that came out of this administration, I think, is a complete debacle. But in this case here, they're trying to stimulate an auto industry that has gone from selling 16 million vehicles down to selling roughly 9 million vehicles. With a program like this, the estimates are you could sell 10.5, maybe 11 million vehicles by the end of the year. We, as the taxpayer, we care about this because we have a huge stake in General Motors and Chrysler. The most important thing we can do right now is address those big ticket items like homes right now and housing. There's another issue. First-time home buyer tax credit, $8,000. Some suggest we should increase that to $15,000.
Well, again, this is like George Bush, where he said to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, I want people to have homes so badly, let's give them loans with no down payment. These people are buying cars and the down payment is coming from the government. So, somebody has a 10-year-old car. They either don't want to spend the money on a new car or they can't afford a new car. They give the old car in. They get the $4,500 from the federal government. They use it as a down payment on a new car. They now have a new car and they have to start making monthly payments, something they couldn't do or weren't doing before. Does this sound familiar?
Yeah, that is the danger here. Couldn't agree with you more. The danger is that access to too much credit is what got us in this position in the first place. And the way we're trying to work our way out of this economy is by offering credit once again, relevering the consumer. Now, in fairness, in the past year, we had a negative savings rate in this country in April of 2008. In the last month's statistics, it was just about 5%, a little less.
So wouldn't it be better if these consumers stayed with the old cars and saved the money rather than paid interest on loans they can't afford?
Here's the issue, Judge. I am the biggest believer in saving. I'd like to see the savings rate between 8 and 10%. I think that's crucial to recovering in this economy. The problem is that is not good for the economy because 70% of GDP, gross domestic product, depends on the American consumer spending. And that's why they're feeding the machine. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. But we haven't figured out, what are we going to do to make up for that consumer who doesn't spend?
All right, the federal government spends $1. In order to spend $1, it's got to take in $1.29. You know that. We don't have to go through the reasons for it. So they spend $3 billion on this cash for clunkers. They're never going to get the $3 billion back. Can't you think of better ways the $3 billion could be spent to stimulate the economy, like investing it, private investment into private enterprises that produce more than the dollar that goes in? Give the government $1, out comes 61 cents. Give IBM $1, out comes $1.06.
Yeah, no, there is no doubt that we could be doing things that would be smarter toward the longer-term reinvestment in the country, like what we talked about 6 months ago, which was that we were going to dedicate money to infrastructure. I was talking to the former CEO of Hasbro today. He's the chairman of the committee. He said, Alexis, in the state of Rhode Island, we've received $57 million. $2 million has been directed toward infrastructure. $55 million has been addressed directly toward the state's budget deficit. That is a debacle.
Of course it is.
No question about it.
It's just postponing the day of reckoning because that federal spigot is going to be turned off at some point, and the state of Rhode Island, I think you said, is going to have to make some hard decisions in the future rather than now.
No matter what we do right now, Judge, here's the bad news. No matter what we say or do, the first fiscal stimulus package was not a good fiscal stimulus package. The good part, in fairness to it, is that it's prolonged. It's not an immediate stimulus. And we will need some type of stimulus in 2010 because this will be harder to recover than anybody anticipates. The reality check, though, is I don't care who you are in this country, you will see taxes rise. There is no other choice. The states, the municipalities themselves are all facing deficits. Very few states across this country actually have a surplus. Very few. And so the president can say all he wants. We will have to raise taxes. There's no doubt those Bush tax cuts are going to expire. And the long run is we're going to pay for this.
Should the Federal Reserve be managing the economy as President Obama wants?
I think we need to look very long and very hard at this. I recently had a Harvard scholar on about over the past century, all the different roles that have been given and levels of responsibility to the Federal Reserve Bank. If you read this, Judge, it will blow your mind. I had no idea how much responsibility we have given them over the past 5 or 6 decades. What that suggests to me is we need to take a long, hard look at this before we make any decisions. And the danger of giving them more power is very problematic given the fact that they were not appropriately overseeing the financial institutions who they had responsibility for overseeing, and they were much too slow to the trigger when it came to the subprime mortgage market.
Let's see. The Federal Reserve came about in 1913. I think I have these statistics right. From 1776 to 1912, the dollar went up 11%. From 1913 to 2008, it went down 95%. What do we even need a Federal Reserve for?
Wow, those are very good. But let's keep in mind that we did move into a global economy. And so a lot of that changed, obviously, over the past 5-6 decades in terms of what role global trade came in, what role the dollar played as the reserve currency, things of that nature. It hasn't always been bad for us that the dollar has declined. It's actually been very good for us because we've been able to sell our goods and products. But the Federal Reserve conversation is something that it worries me when Treasury Secretary Geithner gets upset that we're not moving ahead in regulatory reform. I want to see some regulatory reform. We've got some gaping holes. On the other hand, I don't want a timeline hanging over my head that says it has to be done by the end of the year. You don't fix problems that have been in place for decades and say, we're going to fix them in 6 months.
Got it. Alexis Glick, the Vice President of Business News at the Fox Business Network and anchor of Money for Breakfast. Always a pleasure. I watch Money for Breakfast
before
I come up here.
The best part is I'm sitting here with the judge, and he disagrees with me on 75% of what I'm saying, but he's smiling.
Even though you love big government, I love you.
I don't love big government.
You just sound that way. 8-6, thank you, Alexis.
Serving up a grande auditory espresso. You're with Brian and the Judge.